Hi, my name is Pat, and today I'm going to tell you the story of a man named Farmer Brown, and his 2 horses. Now this is a joke, it's not a true story, but in the end, you will learn something very, very important. Alright, so, one day, Farmer Brown was tending his animals, because, farmers have animals. And while he did run a crack farm, he grew cocaine leaves, in fact, in his many, many acres. But unfortunately, he smoked too much and snorted too much, so he couldn't make any money off of it. Not at all. But it was alright, because it gave him the energy to stay up 99.9% of the time. The 0.1% was when he was lying down because he was having crack seizures. Anyway, so, one day, Farmer Brown was just walking around, feeding his animals. Now, Farmer Brown wasn't a very tall man, nor was he a very short man. He wasn't really in script age, maybe mid-40s, mid-30s. You couldn't really tell because of all the Botox and the crack. Crack. Anyway, his mother was black, Jewish, Mexican, green. And his father was Republican, white Jew. This was a little bit difficult on his part because both of them were actually Catholics. Unfortunately. Oh well. Anyway, so Farmer Brown was just walking around, playing with his animals, feeding them, making sure they were well groomed, because, when you're on crack, you want to have the cleanest animals you possibly can. So he went up to all of his dogs, and his dogs were like, "Oop, oop, oop." They were actually seals. One moment, please. Anyway, the dogs went, "Oop, oop," because they were actually beagles, not seals, beagles, and beagles make "oop, oop, oop" noises. And he fed them some kibble and patted them all on the back, and then brushed their lovely black and brown furs. Then he fed his chickens. Now, all of his chickens were all named, all 5 of them. Ruth, Matilda, Sally, Greg. Greg was his rooster. Greg was not his favorite, though, because Greg, well, sometimes Greg liked to fuck his wife. Yes, I said it. Greg was an adulterous chicken. And then there was another chicken, but he could never remember the name of it, because he was always so angry with Greg for doing his wife. Anyway. So. And then he went and fed his cows. Now, he only had 2 cows, because he wasn't a very rich man, because he sorted all of his crap away. But he did have 2 cows. One was named Joey. Joey D. This is for you, Joey D. You're a cow. Anyway. It was actually a girl cow. But he still named it Joe. Just because he wanted to name it Joe. And he named the other one Greg. Because, sometimes you just want to have transvestite cows. Anyway, the last thing he had was his 2 prized horses. Now, one was named Razzle. Razzle was a little girl horse. She was a little bit shorter than the second horse, because obviously girls are shorter than boys. And he had a boy horse. The boy horse name was Dazzle. Now, Dazzle had a secret crush on Razzle, and Razzle had a secret crush on Dazzle, but we'll get to that later. So, he's just going there, and he built a huge long pen, because, in fact, Razzle and Dazzle were the single most fastest horses in the world. I mean, they were so incredibly fast that you could not possibly ever, ever, ever imagine how unbelievably fast they were. Like, as big as the universe is, that is not even a tenth of how fast they were. They were that fast. It was because of all the crack and meth that he fed them. Anyway, So he had this big long pen because he loved to watch them race. But unfortunately, his wife, Peggy Sue, would not let him put them in a race. It was terrible. It broke him. But since he was actually Catholic and Jewish, he could not divorce her. And so he just ruined his entire life by marrying her because he wanted to put them in a race so bad because they were so damn fast. But anyway, so one day, he was just feeding his animals, you know, and he went, and the horses were all the way down clear at the other end of the thing, pen, you know, and he was all the way up at the other end, and it was like 3 miles long, and he was up at one end, and they were down at the other end, and he was up at one end, and they were down at the other end, and he was up at one end, and he was just putting some food in there. It was a good, healthy mix of vitamins, minerals, apples, oats, nuts, crack, sugar, and alfalfa, because alfalfa was great back in the day. Anyway, so Farmer Brown, you know, he was just feeding his horses. He put some feed in the little trough. You know, he walks away. And then a sly breeze blows in from the west. And it blows some of the lovely smell of crack and alfalfa down, all the way down to the other end. Where Razzle and Dazzle are just kind of sitting there, chilling. Anyway, so they were just sitting there, you know, and then they smell it on the breeze, and they go, because they smell that crack, and meth, and more importantly, their favorite alfalfa. And they get all excited, and they're all riled up, like, oh, there's food, and then Razzle looks up at Dazzle, and then Dazzle looks at Razzle, and Razzle looks up at Dazzle, and Dazzle looks at Razzle, and Razzle looks up at Dazzle, and Dazzle looks at Razzle, and Razzle looks up at Dazzle, Dazzle looks at Razzle, and Razzle looks up at Dazzle, and Dazzle looks at Razzle, and Razzle looks up at Dazzle, because Razzle is a little bit shorter than Dazzle, and Dazzle looks at Razzle, because Dazzle is actually a little bit taller than Razzle, unfortunately. And then Razzle looks up at Dazzle, and Dazzle looks at Razzle, and Razzle looks up at Dazzle and says, hey Dazzle, you want to race? So they just take off like a bolt of lightning, and they're going so fast you can't even see them, and they're just going faster than the fastest rocket ever. And they're just going so fast that it's just a blur. And they're neck and neck, and it's Razzle, Dazzle, 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 Razzle, Dazzle. And then Razzle looks like just a tiny little bit. So they're just sitting there, you know, munching their hay, their alfalfa, and their meth and their crack. And Razzle's like, and Dazzle's like, and Razzle's like, and Dazzle's like. And anyway, Farmer Brown is just kind of walking around, you know, being awesome, because Farmer Brown is awesome. And while the horses had been running, a man who owned a horse track had seen them running. And he was driving at the time. And all of a sudden he sees these horses, and they go past him like nothing. Like he is just a pebble on the ground. And he sees them, and he goes, whoa, 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 those are horses! He was so excited that he drove his car right into a ditch. And so anyway, after he called a tow truck on his cell phone, it was a Nokia, not a very cool Nokia, but it did have 3 games on it. It had Snake, and he really liked playing Snake sometimes when he was driving, you know, and sometimes he would text, and he'd get a little text, and it would go, because that was his favorite song, you know. And then he would text back, and it would go, anyway. So, he ran up to the guy's house, Farmer Brown's, of course, you know. And he ran up to Farmer Brown, and he was like, oh my fucking god, those are the fastest horses I have ever seen. And Farmer Dave is like, yep. And you know, he's just super excited. In fact, Farmer Brown was so excited that he started calling himself Farmer Dave. Dave was his first name, Dave Brown. But we'll get to that later. Anyway,